So to kick things off, what I'll do is I will begin with the end in mind, as we always do, and think about what the outputs of our model are going to need to be. And this is something you would rarely discuss at length with your stakeholders, and make sure that you're all clear on what the outputs need to be, and that way you'll always know that your model is on the right trajectory. So for our purposes, we're going to have two key outputs. The first will be a valuation, and this valuation will involve calculating a few things: a net present value, an internal rate of return, and then a few financial ratios. The second key output will be a series of charts, and there'll be three key charts that we want our model to be able to provide for us. The first one will be focused on revenue, and that will really be about showing what the trajectory of the revenue will be over time. Hopefully it will be growing over time, and the chart will really show us that visually. Then we want to have a chart that lays out our capital assets. And the idea here is that we will acquire some assets at the beginning to be able to run the business. They will depreciate over time. We'll then have to reacquire, they'll depreciate, and the pattern will continue. And then finally, we'll have a chart that lays out our debt. And the idea is that we'll borrow an amount of money at the beginning to help fund the business. And hopefully, in theory, we're paying down our debt so that before the end of the model's timeline, we've paid it all off. So these are the outputs that we want our model to be able to create. And in order to show these at the level of detail that we need, we're going to create a monthly model. So I'll just note that up here, that our model is going to be monthly. And what we want to focus on now are the calculations that are going to be required to be able to create these outputs. And so I'll work through them one at a time. We'll lay them all out and see how everything's going to fit together. So the first set of calculations that we'll need to think about are our revenue calculations. And it's worth noting now that all of the calculations we're going to think about are going to be structured around our two key products, which will be classic pizzas and gourmet pizzas. So every type of calculation I lay out now is going to be essentially repeated across these two products. The core logic of our revenue is simply going to be volume times price. And actually most businesses you can reduce to this basic idea. Now if we look at each of these elements in turn, the volume we're going to calculate for each of our products is simply a base volume multiplied by what I'll call a growth factor. Now the nuance with our base volume is that we're going to want our model to be able to lay out the volumes by different types of days. And the reason for this is that in practice, we would expect, say, the number of pizzas ordered on a Monday to be very different from those ordered on a Friday, on a weekend, on a public holiday. So one of the things we're going to need to calculate in our model for every month of our timeline are how many weekdays are in each month. So that's Monday through to Friday. How many weekend days are in each month? And how many public holidays are in each month? And that's where things probably might get a little tricky. In terms of the growth factor, the idea here is that in each period we will uplift our volume by some amount, and we'll work out that amount by 1 plus a growth rate. And we're going to use compound growth here, so we'll go to the power of the number of months that have passed. And the idea here is that using this approach will create a smooth trajectory of how our volumes will grow over time. Looking at the price element of our revenue formula, this will follow a very similar idea in that we're going to have a base price. And again, we're going to multiply that by a factor to grow. In this case, we'll call it an escalation factor. And that's because here we're going to be using a thing called the Consumer Price Index, or the CPI. And so we'll refer to that as escalation rather than growth. Now, in terms of our price, one of the nuances we need to keep in mind is that we're going to want to charge a different price for pizzas that are delivered versus pizzas that will be picked up. And actually knowing that we need to price in this way means that we're going to have to revert to our volumes and think about what the split will be between the volumes that are delivered versus the volumes that are picked up so that we can then apply different pricing. Now with the escalation factor, the factor that we uplift our price by in any period will simply be equal to a future CPI value, whatever that will be, divided by a base CPI value that will always be constant. The future CPI value in any period will again grow according to this 1 plus a growth rate idea to the power of the number of months. But the difference here is rather than having smooth growth like we did with our volumes, we're going to have stepped annual growth. So we'll need to build our model to take that into account. And the idea here is that it would be quite unusual for a business to change its pricing every month. That wouldn't really be very realistic. So to try and make our model a bit more realistic, we will only increase the price at the end of every 12 months. But what those increases will be will follow this approach. Okay, well, now that we've laid out essentially what our revenue side of the equation will be, the next thing we want to think about are our operating costs. And there are two key types of operating costs that we need to reflect in our model. The first we will call fixed costs, and the second we will call variable costs. Now, fixed costs will be all those types of categories of costs that aren't affected by our volumes. So things like salaries, rent, utilities, things that will be whatever they are, regardless of how many pizzas we're selling. So how we're going to reflect those in the model is for each category, we're just going to have a base cost amount multiplied by an escalation factor. And in this case, our escalation factor could be CPI, the Consumer Price Index, like what we were talking about up here, or it could be WPI, the Wage Price Index, which would be relevant for things like salaries. So our fixed costs will just follow that basic approach. In terms of variable costs, there will be two types of variable costs. The first we'll call direct variable costs, and this name comes from the idea that there's a direct relationship between the cost and the volumes that are being sold. And for our business, the key direct variable costs that we will reflect are the raw materials of each pizza. So hopefully it makes sense that the more pizzas we make, the more raw materials we need to make them. So the way we will model these is we will have a raw materials unit price. So how much are the raw materials going to be for each pizza that we make? We will again apply an escalation factor as normal. And then we will multiply that by the volumes. And that's where this direct link between the volumes and the cost comes in. The other the other variable costs that we'll be working through are indirect variable costs. And these costs will grow with our volumes, but not in this direct manner. It will be more of an indirect relationship. And for our business, the indirect variable costs will be the wages of our cooks and our drivers. So the idea is that the more pizzas that need to be made, the more we will have to pay our cooks and drivers because the more they will be working. But it's not like for every extra pizza we make, we'll need an extra cook. So what we'll need to map out is that relationship. And the way we will do it is our wages cost will be equal to an hourly rate for our cooks and drivers, multiplied by the hours that we require them to work. Now the way we'll work out our hours required is we will say how many shifts do our workers need to work and how many hours are there per shift. And then finally, the number of shifts that we need to work will be determined as the volume of pizzas being made divided by what we'll call a capacity. So the capacity for a cook would be how many pizzas can they make within a shift. For a driver, it would be how many pizzas can they deliver within a shift. And so here we see this link between our volume and the ultimate cost of the wages, but it's indirect. It goes through quite a few concepts before we get to our cost, and that's why we call it an indirect variable cost. Okay, the final few things we need to think about in terms of what we need to map out for this model will be a capital expenditure profile and then financing. If we focus on the CapEx, the idea here is that in order to be able to make our pizzas and generate revenue, we're going to need some assets. And the two key assets for our business will be an oven to make the pizzas, and then some scooters to deliver them. And for both of these types of assets, there are really two key things that we need to know. We need to know how much they will cost and when we will need to pay for them. And the nuance we need to keep in mind with our CapEx, if we come back to our capital assets diagram, they're going to be recurring costs. And that's because once all the assets are depreciated to the end of their useful life, we're going to need to repurchase them. So our capital expenditure profile will have to keep recurring throughout our model. And so we need to make sure our logic can do that. Finally, we want to think about our financing. And that's where we're going to get the money from to pay for our CapEx, particularly the upfront CapEx. So the amount we need to spend on our oven and scooters before we're making any revenue. So how are we going to pay for it? And the two key sources of that money will be equity and debt. And equity will be the money that investors pump into the business, and we'll work that out by simply taking a percentage of the upfront CapEx. And once we've worked that out, the debt will simply be equal to the upfront CapEx minus whatever we've worked out with the equity. Now with the debt, the thing we need to think about is that we will be repaying our debt by a profile that's called a credit foncier, or in other words, an amortizing loan profile, which really just means every time we make a repayment, part of that repayment will be paying down the principal, so that the amount of debt outstanding will be going down over time. Okay, now that we've laid out all our core components of the model, they are all going to come together into a thing that I'll call the financial statements, or the fin stats. And the three financial statements that we'll learn about will be the income statement, the balance sheet, and a cash flow statement. And because these are fairly standardized accounting ideas, you wouldn't need to map them out in detail in a whiteboarding like this. We just need to know that all of our calculations from section 1 through to 4 are going to feed into the financial statements. And then it's the financial statements that feed into our valuation and then feed into our charts. And so the way the mechanism of the whole model will work is we will calculate each block. They will feed into the financial statements, and those financial statements will feed into our outputs. And now that we've mapped all of those ideas of the logic out, what we can do is actually highlight all of the elements that are going to require us to make assumptions. So things like our base volumes, things like the split between delivered and pickup, our growth rates, our base CPI, our fixed cost base costs, our capacity of our workers, the hourly rates, the raw materials unit pricing, the hours per shift, the equity percentage split, how much and when of our CapEx. All of these are essentially the inputs of our model. And how we're going to structure them is we're going to create something called a scenario manager. And the scenario manager will be a centralized repository for all of our assumptions, so that everything will feed in to this one central area and allow us to perform what we'll call what-if analysis. So what if all of my assumptions change? How will that affect the calculations, which will then affect the financial statements, which will then affect our valuation and our charts? That's the idea of the model. The whole purpose of the model is to be able to play around with all of the assumptions and see what happens. So there you have an example of what it can look like to sketch out a model on a whiteboard. Hopefully that's helped give you a flavour for what you would be doing as a professional modeler. And it's only when you get to the point that you can lay everything out like this that you would then have the confidence to dive into Excel and start mapping everything out. It's much easier to change your thinking and erase something on a whiteboard than it is to try and undo what you may have built in Excel. The only final thing worth noting in terms of whiteboarding etiquette and the professionalism, generally you should follow the discipline where once you're done, you would pull out your phone, take some photos, and that will help you both remember what you've drawn, but also share the thinking with other people. You should then erase what you've done, because particularly when you're working on, say, M&A transactions, the mere knowledge of a transaction can be market sensitive, so you don't want to be leaving information around. If you are ever in a situation where you're only part way through, so you need to keep working but you have to walk away, the good discipline is to put a date as to when this shouldn't be erased, put your name, a contact number, and that way people, if they do come across it, will know whether it's safe to get rid of or not. And it's those little professional nuances that will separate the good financial modelers from the best financial modelers.